So today what we're going to be talking about is a pretty big issue that we've noticed statewide that seems to be an ongoing theme from you as members of the Master Gardener associations across the state, and that is recruiting volunteers. So we're going to really hit on recruiting today, a little bit on retention, but really focus on some mechanisms that we can put in place at the local level to help us with our recruiting efforts. So why do we want to recruit? Why is this needed? Why is it so essential? Because by doing this, we're just enabling the future growth of our local organizations. And not only that, but we're helping to grow our state organization as well. We're increasing all kinds of network opportunities and partnership capabilities and things like that across the state. So when we do get into those heavy moments of recruiting, like for the new intern classes and things like that, it's also a good time for the membership to take this opportunity to kind of maybe revamp some of their efforts with the current membership as far as retention efforts. Just maybe kind of review that, maybe consider putting a plan in place to help with some of those retention efforts a little bit later on down the road. I put this slide in here because I think it really focuses on recruiting as a whole and why that's so important. And I use this illustration to show that circle of flow. And none of these circles are necessarily more important than the other, but they all help encourage, engage, empower, and enable our members in recruiting efforts, which overall, again, helps grow that local membership. So when we're engaging that current membership, it's going to enable the growth of the organization. It's going to help encourage participation, and you're empowering all your members when you're getting them to actively recruit. So in some of our statewide efforts, when we met as a state leadership team and all the work groups came together in December, this question was kind of put out to us in our own strategic plan. How do we utilize various venues and communication channels, across the state or within the local organizations to continue connectivity among our local groups? And I like this slide because it's got that arrow pointing up, and that's just showing growth. But this whole slide is just about people. So I think we can answer this question with one word, and that is you, the current membership body. So looking at this slide, it's all about selling yourself, and it's kind of multifaceted here because we can look at this as an individual basis. Selling yourself as an individual Master Gardener, being able to share that story, make those connections with other people, other organizations, and things like that that you're involved with, at the county level. But it's also as a membership body, being able to cohesively mesh your organization at the local level in order to promote, and market the organization to where other people want to join the Master Gardener group at the local level. So it truly is the members that sell the program. So case in point is here in Greene County, we started advertising for 2020 classes back in October. Did some early bird specials, but most of that was generated through me on social media channels. We also published a few articles in the Greenville Sun, our local newspaper, and then also on Saturday morning's radio station. But we just weren't getting a lot of response. We actually had 4 folks register or apply for the 2020 class after the first of the year. So obviously I didn't feel like we could go forward with 4 members. So I sent out an email to those 4 individuals as well as the current membership and said, hey guys, we need to be recruiting. We need to get some more bodies for our class, or we're not going to be able to hold this. And lo and behold, now we've got enough to make the class, and we start in a couple of weeks. And that was all the Master Gardeners here in the county selling themselves as a Master Gardener, having some one-on-one conversations and getting the word out, and that's huge. But about Master Gardeners. what they are and what they do and how they operate. So it's just being an active and engaged member, and that's just going to poise your local associations for more involvement, just because it's the word of mouth that really does sell. Another thing to keep in mind is when we are recruiting, we don't want to focus on one specific audience. Oftentimes, and no offense meant to anyone, but a lot of times we hear, oh, Master Gardeners are just a bunch of old retired people playing in the dirt. And it's like, wow, we're so much more than that. Why are we not sharing that story a little bit more effectively? Because, if we look across the state, sure, we've got a lot of retired folks in Master Gardeners, but we also have many members that are spanning multi-generations here. So, when we start into recruiting, we want to make sure that we're recruiting across all audiences. We want to be inclusive. We want to be diverse, as we're putting forth our recruiting efforts, because it's important to recognize that all generations are going to contribute to the overall success. We kind of alluded to some of these things earlier this morning. The younger generation, they have grown up with technology. It's second nature to them. They don't necessarily have to stop and think or try to maybe figure things out, because it just clicks. That's just what they're used to. So, the older generation can really learn from them. But at the same time, you flip that, the older generation, they're the ones that maybe have been with the Master Gardener Association a little bit longer. They've seen the growth and the change within the organization. They're the ones that are going to be in tune with the customs and the culture. And, in the past, we've talked about creating the culture at the local level. But anything historical, providing any kind of heritage, any kind of relevance, to the organization, it's that older generation, those traditions that are going to be maintaining those. And then you've got your middle-aged folks that are just kind of helping bridge the gap between those two audiences. So basically what I'm saying is that there's somewhere for all ages to fit within the scope of our Master Gardener associations across the state. And when we look at recruiting efforts, again, an important thing to remember as an organization is that it is you that is selling the program, but you yourself look a little bit deeper, and then think about each member within your organization, what they're involved with, what they do outside of the realm of Master Gardener. We've got working folks today that are involved in many other facets of the local community. We may even have some that are serving on county commission boards or the school board. We're going to have some that we refer to as key stakeholders or kingmakers, and that's a term, as we move through the leadership component this year, you'll learn more about. Friends, family, and neighbors. How better and where better to start really than with this audience alone. But then that top bullet there, civic organizations. We have so many members within our organizations across the state that are setting on numerous other local boards, Rotary, fair boards, or they're actually just volunteering for other civic organizations, local museum boards, maybe some fundraising efforts, even some youth things that folks might be involved with. So there are places for every member within your organization to do some recruiting. And even inadvertently, you may be doing it just not knowing you're doing it. By telling your story, people seeing what you're doing within Master Gardeners, and that's what really sells the program. It all basically comes down to those outreach efforts, and many associations across the state are going to have maybe some committees in place for outreach or membership, things like that. That group of people is only focusing specifically on recruiting new members. Retention might be a component of that as well, but good old-fashioned outreach, it lends itself a long way. That's something to really remember. And oftentimes, like I say, we're doing it, we just may not recognize that we're doing it. And it's tapping into that potential and kind of expanding on that is what makes our outreach a little bit more successful in recruiting terms. So
I put this slide in here because ask.com, you know, it's very popular for people to use this search engine, or the old Ask Jeeves. I had a niece that we used to aggravate her all the time. We'd call her Jeeves. If we didn't know something, we'd say, hey, just ask Jeeves, and she'd Google it for us. But I don't want to compare this to a technology platform, but the reason I put ask here is because that's what's most often overlooked, is that we just don't ask people to come join our organization. We don't have one-on-one conversations with folks. We get busy doing our own thing, living our own lives, and we just don't think about how important that interaction is with potential recruits. You know, and some of the other ways that you can look at this are, you know, when you're asking people to join, again, you may think that it's self-evident, but you'd be surprised. That circle, go back to that circle we just looked at a few minutes ago. How many of those people don't maybe really know what Master Gardeners are and what you do? You know, when people visit your website, is there a section there for potential members? Are you highlighting your volunteers through social media channels or any of those volunteer activities, events, fundraisers, things like that? Are people that are seeing this, are they thinking, this is something I'd like to join, or hey, you know, I could be a part of this group? Are you pitching stories to your local media that somewhere embedded maybe within a TV interview, a radio interview, or even a news article is saying, you know, we're always looking for new members, you know, feature your volunteers, feature your projects, ask what they're doing, you know, where they can put their fingers out into the community to spread the word. You know, another point to consider is that volunteer is going to mean different things to different people. The one thing that is pretty much specific in the definition of volunteer is that you're not being paid as a volunteer. It's not a specific description of a job. So when you're recruiting, maybe in those one-on-one conversations or at other organizations that you're involved with, when the conversation comes up, maybe people don't know what you're doing. You know, when they think volunteer, they're thinking like this lady here, just licking envelopes till the cows come home, and you know, mundane task, not really wanting to be a part of that. But if you really push that gardening component and how it's tied to educational outreach, that gets folks excited when they realize they can get out there and dig in the dirt, and they want to be a part of that. Something that seems to be a disconnect maybe here in the last several years too, maybe where we could all get a little bit stronger, is just that terminology, Master Gardener. Sometimes that can be intimidating to individuals, or they may automatically assume that you have to have a high level degree of education, a PhD even, to go through our classes, and we all know that is absolutely not the case. What drives us again is that general interest in gardening, and then service to others and helping grow our community. So being able to share that when you tell your Master Gardener story from an individual basis or from an entire membership body really kind of helps do away with that disconnect at the local level. All right, so this next slide shows about how volunteers are wonderful and you need them. And I mean, we look at that, coordinators across the state, from our vantage point. You know, you volunteers are wonderful and we need you. But at the same token, flip that around and, you know, we have to ask ourselves, why do they need us? You know, why should someone want to give time, effort, energy to this organization? So you as an individual Master Gardener, or you as a complete membership body, need to think about that. You know, why? Why should someone come and join? And most of the time, what's going to grab folks to join our associations across the state is because they want to make a difference. They want to utilize a skill set. They want to meet others in their community. They want to work toward a cause that they believe in, that they're passionate about. But it all ultimately drives back to the center of this circle. It's about helping others. And that's something we really need to focus on when we are recruiting people, because that's oftentimes where we are going to make the most impact and our efforts is making sure that people know the hows and the whys and the whats that we are doing from an organizational standpoint. So this next slide just talks about, how do we do that? If we're out in the communities and we've got these outreach efforts in place, we've been recruiting pretty actively, and we get people, we've got them hooked. What's our follow through on that from an organizational standpoint? If people submit something online, a form, that they're interested, or they're sending an email to the coordinator or to someone in the group, or you're out at an outreach event in your community, a church fair or a county fair or farmer's market, and they're filling out little sheets on a clipboard. Follow up with that, because first impressions really do make a big difference. So you want to make sure that you're following through pretty quickly, because we don't want people just being like, well, they don't even care. They're not even following through with this. And at the same time, you want people that are going to be helpful, friendly, easy to get along with, that understand people. You don't want people being mean or rude. You want to make sure that you're helping pull those new people in. You want to be kind, but most importantly, you want to make it an easy transition. Have the steps in place. When it's time for folks to fill out an application, make it easy. Make that process easy. So once you do hook them, you can reel them all in, and it's not going to be a major process. You're not going to lose that person in the process. Designating a membership outreach team to focus on this can be a task, and only those individuals are going to work on that. And sometimes that's an easier way to do this. Another important thing to consider is that this triangle here, not all people are going to volunteer the same amount of time. Number one, we've got a lot of working folks that are not going to be able to devote the time. Maybe we have some couples with young children, and children involved with things are not going to be able to participate as much. Could have some folks that have sick parents or something that they're taking care of. Basically, they just have other obligations. So some individuals are only going to be able to volunteer a couple times a year, or maybe as you start filtering on down, once or twice a month, maybe once or twice a week. But then we have, hopefully, we all have those individuals that, are maybe coming into the office and manning the helpline about every day, or they're active in projects about every day. And it's almost treated like a part-time job. So basically, you've got the whole gamut here. And the critical component is when we are recruiting is to make sure that we're maximizing opportunities to help out at different levels of commitment for all people, and being able to communicate that, just be transparent about that up front, because that can be the deciding factor for pulling in new volunteers. So we've talked a little bit about recruitment. Of course, we're going to hear first from some counties with specific examples to some of these, but just wanted to spend a little bit of time here on retention, because that is step 2 of the recruitment process. And the key thing here to remember is that recruiting is pretty easy. It can be maybe a little intimidating for some organizations, but it truly is the easy part. But once you recruit new volunteers, you get new interns that are going through the classes, you got a bunch of happy people. The current membership body's probably pretty happy. You got some new blood coming on, got a lot of excitement brewing, but then what happens? The hard part hits, because, you can't keep everybody happy. Some people are going to get their feelings hurt. Egos get in the way, personality conflicts. So then that's when the recruiting turns to step 2, which is all about retaining. And how do we do that? Because the hard part, again, is keeping them. I like this picture because you can look at this 2 different ways. You've got the little red body running off in one direction, and that could be, somebody in your new intern class being like, "Oh, this ain't for me." Communications or expectations might not have been communicated up front. They realize the time investment or just decide it's not for them. And you got the other 4 that are like, hey, gung-ho, let's go. But, you know, you can also look at this in reverse. It might be the 4 people leaving the organization and you've only got 1 that wants to stay with the group. So it's then that those retention efforts really need to kick in, because, you know, now you can see everybody's going in one direction, one unified direction, and that's what we want. When we bring in all those new interns, we want them to stay with the organization. We want to turn them into recruiters for the next year. We want to, you know, put our focus on how do we get everyone included? How do we keep everyone involved? How do we engage all of our members? How do we empower them to go forth and, you know, be a part of the group, be a part of the community? So this is going to be an area we'll spend more focus on later, but, you know, just some key things to remember is that you've got to be really consistent in your recruiting efforts. Really sit down and reevaluate recruiting and retention efforts each year at the county level, determine which direction your membership needs to be moving. And remember that it's all about you as a Master Gardener really selling the program. You know, you're the biggest marketer of this program, whether that be to an individual, whether that be, you know, to other communities within the county that you're in, or even statewide. You know, sharing your story, coming up with a little elevator speech as to why you're a Master Gardener and what you're involved with. You know, that's really and truly what sells the program. It's just the passion behind the why.